All right, buckle your seatbelts, everybody. Here we go. One of the great joys of coming up here every year is hooking up again with our buddy, the astronaut Jerry Linenger. Great to see you.
It's great to be back with you, Frank. And this is a great tradition. I love it. I love seeing you here and the cherry spitting and everything else.
I do too. I tell people, I always get this question: who are the favorite people you've ever interviewed? And I don't know what they're expecting to hear, but without fail, you're always at, in the top 3 on the list.
I appreciate that, sir. I had some great life experience, saw the world from a different perspective, and I think there's lessons to be learned from that.
Well, and you're always willing to share it with us candidly, and that's what I love about you too, among many others.
I appreciate it.
So we get this note from Jerry. He says, I've got a friend visiting from down in Carolina for the Cherry Festival named Tom Russel. He said, I'd like to bring him along and put him on the show. And he says to Tom, he sends him an email. We get a copy of this. It says, send your bio so Frank knows what you did. So I want to read this bio. Just a part of it.
Please, Frank. Please, I got people in North Carolina.
Tom Russel. He applies strong contract management, program control, scheduling, and reporting processes, development statements of work and work breakdown structures, and manages resource allocation as well as all personnel and staffing matters. This goes on for 2 pages.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm going, what does this man do?
I know, Frank, but he's an air boss. He's an air boss on an aircraft carrier, and that's cool stuff. That, you can't tell what the heck he does. I agree with you. He's my old Naval Academy friend. We were old roommates at the U.S. Naval Academy, class of '77, and it's we're still, buddies for life, kind of that band of brothers. So.
I said there is nobody that dull that hangs with Jerry Linenger on a regular basis.
Believe me, it's difficult hanging with him at all.
So you went to Naval Academy with Jerry?
We did. We graduated together. Jerry went his way through kind of naval aviation / to being a doctor, and I was a naval aviator. And went on to be a squadron commander and an air boss of an aircraft carrier. And then I retired years ago, and all the stuff you just read is what I've been doing after retirement. So that's the boring part.
As a test and evaluation coordinator for multiple C-41 programs on the staff of the Chief of Naval Operations, he adjudicated C-41 acquisition-related issues with Navy Systems Command.
Shoot, Frank, I can't even say those words. That adjudicated. I would have been a mess on that one.
And you've got degrees from how many different kinds?
Yeah, 4 or 5. Yeah, a couple doctors, couple masters, and I still can't read that.
So, Tom, you went on to become an air boss on an aircraft carrier. Did Jerry ever try to talk you into joining him with the NASA program?
I wasn't. I didn't have that kind of makeup. I don't think. I was a dumb football player. Is what I was.
No way.
Oh yeah. And
where'd you play?
I played in Navy, and I was a defensive back. And after a couple of years, I had both knees taken out. I figured I wanted to walk the rest of my life, and I didn't know anything about the Navy.
What was your record against Sergeant?
Never lost. Never lost. 4-0. Jerry was there the whole time.
Stand
on the field. Tells that too, does,
Go Navy, beat Army. That's what we say every day.
So you were a DB. You never wanted to fly.
I was there to
that
play
part of
football, and they were highly recruiting us to go New Power, which back in the old days you had to go interview with Rickover, the father of the nuclear navy, and they were terrible interviews, 4-hour interviews.
What do you mean you had to interview?
You went to Washington D.C. and every person that went into the nuclear power program that went on our submarines had to personally have a 4-hour interview with Admiral Rickover.
Why?
That's the way he was.
He wanted to hand select his people as officers on a nuclear submarine.
And so here we are, 4 years into the school, and there's only 1,000 of us in our class, and I'm getting on this bus to go down to Washington D.C. to do this interview. I'm looking at this bus, and I'm like, who the hell are these people? I don't know any of these people. They got these ugly glasses on and slide rules and stuff. And I got off the bus and said, I think I'll go aviation. That's where my buddies are.
Did you go through the interview though?
No,
you skipped it? You literally got off the bus.
I got off the bus. There's people who've gone in that interview, and Rickover would look at him and say, I see that you're going to get married upon graduation from Annapolis. Rickover would say, I want you to pick up that phone and call your fiance and say, we're going to wait till after I finish prototype school. And he would pick up the phone and get his fiance on the phone and says, honey, we're going to naval aviation.
He was famous throwing people out of the office. If you salted your food before you tasted it, you're not in my nuclear power program. You're not cautious enough. How do you know it's not salty already? He'd throw them out of the office, rant, rage, but he
He had.
We have a great record of nuclear submarines, never an accident.
It's a very extremist program. It's almost like being a NASA astronaut. But he had a guy that was a wise guy in there one day, giving some smart, flippant answers, and Rickover said, "You think you can really take me off? I'll give you 10 seconds to do something to take me off. I've seen everything." And the kid looked across the room and he had a 30-foot model of a Trident submarine under glass. The guy went over there, picked that thing up and threw it and broke it on the ground, and Rickover looked into it. You're in the program. I mean, those are the kind of interviews they were like.
That's wild stuff.
But anyway, naval aviators are a lot more fun. That's just that's the brown shoe guys.
That's why we can laugh at those guys.
Drill in every port, you know, the stuff, you know, the reason I went to the Naval Academy.
So what is an air boss?
An air boss is, you're the guy that, you remember the old Top Gun movies, and Maverick always wanted to fly by the tower. And
right, he said, no, you can't.
Negative Ghost Rider, the pattern's full, and he'd do it anyway, and then he'd spill that coffee all over his yellow jersey. Well, he's the guy up in the tower that coordinates all the activity on the flight deck, the launching, the recovery, the fueling, the ordnance, the movement of aircraft, the hangar bay and the flight deck. It's a great big ship, but it's a very small airport. And you got 90-some airplanes on there, and it's kind of a time-space problem. You share the same time, the same space that you launch, that you refuel, that you land. And so you got to orchestrate that thing, and there's 750 guys that kind of know that ballet. And if anything kind of goes wrong, it goes bad pretty quickly. And so.
And it's Tom's head. You know, the Admiral's on town. What's going on? Why is my deck fouled? Why are we not launching that attack right now?
And he's not using an IMAC, he's using an ITOM up there.
Exactly. And you know, literally, you're writing fuel states of airplanes on your window to track them all. And there's some 30-some airplanes in the air, and you're tracking all that stuff in your head. And then there's the captain's calling you on this phone, the admiral's calling you on that phone, and people that work for you are calling you on different phones. And you've literally got not enough ears and not enough mouths to handle all that stuff. But it's a real good job when you're kind of a young guy. You've got to be young to be able to juggle those kinds of balls and be a quick thinker kind of guy.
How long did you do that?
That was a 2-year tour. And then from there you go on to do those things that you read in my bio afterwards.
Let's see.
No more of that, Frank.
He has over 7 years of experience working as a system engineering and technical assistance support contractor for PMW 120's DCGS-N program office.
Man, that sounds like NASA talk.
Actually, when you dumb that down, Frank, that's basically the intelligence suite. All the intelligence that goes on to a Navy big aircraft carrier, all that information from satellite imagery and all that stuff goes into the carrier, and you make decisions on what target you're going to put on what person's head, where you make target acquisition from. So all the intelligence comes in from satellites, from human intelligence, from signals intelligence, and all that stuff is looked at by people on that system, and they make a decision whether they're going to strike.
You say, Maverick, you are striking that target at this time.
And that's what that is.
Yeah.
Did you ever land on a carrier?
I've landed many times on a carrier. I was the #2 guy, but the pilots would say, "Hey, Jerry, you got it." I was sort of the co-pilot, and I take it in, and it's
Is that hard? Is it hard to do?
It's very, very hard, and I'll tell you. And they've done this. They've done studies. They look at in Vietnam, fighter pilots in the middle of a dogfight, looking at their heart rates and things, relatively calm. They land on the back of an aircraft carrier on a dark night with that deck going up and down, and that's where their heart gets going. And the back end of an aircraft carrier on a stormy night, you better have your act together. You better concentrate 100%. And as a flight surgeon, that was part of my job, is to make sure the guys weren't distracted, that they could execute that task and not take that plane in the back end of the ship.
It's a moving runway.
It's a moving runway, and it bounces.
Well, actually, it is not only forward, but where they land is angled off to the side. So as the ship goes that way, your runway is always moving to the right. So you're always hearing the air boss, right for line up, you know, because the guy's got to dip his wing, because the ship's moving to the right. So your runway, you're trying to, like landing on Traverse City, it's like your runway is always moving to the right while the ship moves forward.
Hey Frank, I had one fun one. I'm coming up from Diego Garcia in a modified aircraft, had no weaponry on it, 4-seater, bringing an Admiral up, and we get F-14 come on our wing, and it pops up next to it, and the guy goes, shh, you know, puts his fingers to his lips. Another one pops on our other wing, guy behind us. And then he says, sort of, follow me. We follow him over, so we got 3 F-14s and this unarmed S-3, and we get behind a Russian Bear bomber, and he kind of tells us what position to get in. And that guy's just cruising along, not knowing what not knowing what is about to happen to him, heading toward our aircraft carrier. We did not want him getting to our aircraft carrier. and all of a sudden those F-14s, one guy thumped them, went over the top,
What do you mean,
came
thumped
down hard. You go over the top fast, and you put afterburner on, and you drop down, and it disturbs the airstream, and that guy could drop 500 feet, wings do this, and F-14 on one wing, F-14 on the other wing, we're behind him, everyone turns on their fire control radar, I'm sure his cockpit is lighting, we give him a little hand signal, good old American, you know, get the heck out of here, buddy, and we kind of tell him we are, you know, turning, and you better turn, or you're not going to be around very long, and we all turn away. And then got guided back to the aircraft carrier for a landing with not much fuel left, and the air boss is, you know, screaming, you know, S3, you better get down. And the thing Tom didn't say, it's about every 45 seconds they're launching, boom. 45 seconds later, boom. Landing every 45 seconds. That's a tough coordinated task to get all those guys back, and you got fuel stations.
They're going to catch the tail hook, right?
That's what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to land one every 45 seconds, get the thing they landed on back in battery for the next airplane that's coming back around, and then get the guy out of the wires, get him taxied to a parking spot, and park him literally 3 inches apart, because you want to have as many airplanes on that aircraft carrier as you can get. There's 90-some plus. And if you park them 4 inches apart, you can only get 85.
And the wings fold up on Navy jets.
Well, I was going to say, the wings fold up. I had a great experience over the weekend. They had Osprey out here at the airport, and I met the Marine captain who flies it, Tina Terry. And what's amazing, I've told this on the air twice already, I'm sorry to bore everybody, you guys probably know this, but the way those nacelles, the engines with the props go up and down, is a little thumb wheel on the throttle. It's unbelievable.
It's changed a lot, Frank. Used to you have to yank those things around. My first plane I ever flew in training, the rudder pedals mattered in that plane. It had a big radial 8 engine, and when you cranked up that engine, it would literally turn the airplane instead of the propeller, basically. I mean, if you didn't crank on that pedal, and it was a mechanical sort of thing, you had to get around, you had to fight it. Now it's, you know, it's fingertip, target acquisition, glass cockpit, guys talking to you. You know, it's pretty remarkable what we can do and how far that operation's come. But you still got to land on that carrier. And that was what a lot of other nations thought they could duplicate us, and they could not get the operation down pat.
Are you worried we're moving away from that, though? I mean, we'll get into the space program in a minute here, but...
Yeah, you know, you hear the talk, and it sounds like we're doing everything right, and we got to, you know, be the technology leader in order to keep jobs in America, and we've got to keep leading the world. But then you look at the action, and if you really look at the action, very, very disturbing. And one part of that is our... shuttle phase out here with our last launch coming up, and that's kind of okay, a little bittersweet for me. That's Atlantis, that's the ship that brought me home after 5 months in space. But I was okay with that because we were transitioning to a state-of-the-art vehicle, modern systems, modern materials, get us to Mars, move mankind forward. Instead, we phased out the one and did not bring in the next step. So we are stuck now, Frank, literally, for probably the next 5 years, getting on our knees to the Russian government and saying, would you please take us up in an old 1962 model, basically, Soyuz capsule to get us to our International Space Station. That's where we got to.
Terry, I thought the movement now is to encourage the space program to move to sort of private ownership and private exploration.
And it sounds good, but you know, Boeing's private, Lockheed's private, they know how to build advanced spacecraft. We had a briefing, we had a national reunion, all the crusty old Apollo guys, and we had each of those 5 companies that are building these space tourism type things give a briefing. When it was all done, Walt Cunningham, old Apollo guy, raised his hand, crusty guy. I like these guys, they talk straightforward, you know.
Kind of like the Tom that we met rather than the one on the file.
That's exactly right. He says, you know, he raised his hand, he says, you know, I think we built that aircraft, that spacecraft that you're trying to build, I think it was 1962. He looks over to Alan Bean, 4th man on the moon, and he says, Alan, was it 62 we built a capsule that could barely get into space and not take a man up there, but at least orbit the Earth once or twice? And Alan Bean says, you know, yeah, it was June of 62 we built that spacecraft. So, you know, that's the privatization, if you will. It sounds good. I like privatization of things, but you don't do it with a bunch of companies that have never done this in the past, have no experience, and take NASA, guys that know what they're doing, and people that are bold, trying to do the next generation stuff. and revert back to build a vehicle that we built in 1962 if they're lucky. And you know,
there was a story this week from Washington about all of this and how NASA's in disarray. And the deputy administrator of NASA said, we inherited this. This was something that was here before the last couple of years, this disarray.
You know, I think false. I've been caught between that rock and a hard place, coming back from that Mir space station and the politics of the U.S.-Russian stuff going on, and I know it's a broken down spacecraft. I know the NASA administrator, old astronaut Charlie Bolden, good guy, but he is in a tough spot because he got appointed by the present administration. And, you know, they want to move to give money to these companies that, to be frank with you, gave a lot of campaign funds to that election committees there. And that group has gotten a lot of the money. And you talked about budgetary restraints. I understand it. NASA understood it. And I give them credit because they're going to phase that shuttle out. Very painful. Take a year to use that money to build that next vehicle. And the pie is still the same size. It's just that they took about a third of it and gave it to these private companies that are building 1962 spacecraft. So now we don't have enough money to build the advanced spacecraft. So NASA's not in disarray. They're in disarray because the top orders coming down to them don't allow them to do their job, to be bold, to move mankind forward, to build state-of-the-art stuff, and to push the envelope. Instead, we revert back, and you know, I just say it's one giant leap backwards. You talk about Kennedy in the old days saying, you know, we choose to go to the moon and do other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And that's what NASA should do. NASA wants to do it, but they don't have the government leadership giving them that marching order and letting them handle their own budget to build state-of-the-art stuff. And I'm with 99% of the astronauts would agree with that at our astronaut reunion. They cherry pick a couple guys to go and stand next to, to be frank, President Obama down there at NASA laying off 5,000 people that dedicated their life to moving us forward. You know, it was a sad moment.
Can you stick around a while?
Absolutely.
We got the spit contest, and you're the official voice of the spit contest.
I love it, and I can't wait.
Tom, you're not going to believe this.
I've seen the pits, and I'm not kidding.
We do it right in the lobby.
Yeah, we're in the beautiful
lobby.
lobby.
Yeah, and he'll spit away. Frank's pretty darn good. They bring in the best of Traverse City to go against Frank, and it's usually a pretty darn good contest.
You guys take a rest. We'll take a quick break. Mike and Denise Busley are here from Grand Traverse Pie Company. We're going to bring them in here in a moment, and then we close out our show, of course, with the famous pit spinning contest right from the lobby of the Park Place Hotel. Back in a moment.
Spending a little time with George Linenger.
Man, that was a long one.